Hey listeners, host Tyler Valencia here. Before we get to the episode, I want to tell you about a product I wear every day and has been a game changer for my health. Naboso Performance Insoles. The Naboso line of insoles are recommended for waking up the feet when standing at work, enhancing foot awareness, and increasing foot stimulation. I personally wear the Duo insoles, which offer the highest level of stimulation, and I can't say enough positive things about them. I used to have foot pain after sitting at my desk, working away all day, and will make getting ready to work out a process and a half. Using these insoles has helped me, and if you want to give them a try, head to the link in the description and then come back to share your feedback with us.
Feeling inspired by hosts Ron and Tyler to work on your health? The MovieBuffs podcast is brought to you by Time to Train Fitness, your home for on-demand workouts for every level of fitness. Exercise with amazing certified instructors that want you to push through any barriers. At Time to Train Fitness, you'll find quality workouts across 6 class formats, including indoor cycling, HIIT, bar, yoga, strength training, and dance cardio. Stream brand new classes releasing every week in our 450 plus on-demand workout library. Use the link in the description to view all of the membership options and to start a free 5-day trial. Get ready to press play on your next workout.
Hello to our fellow film and fitness freaks, fanatics, aficionados, and enthusiasts, and welcome back to episode 5 of the MovieBuffs podcast. We are the strongest podcast in the world about movies. You are in for a treat today, as this is our first ever episode all about being ticklish. And I'll tell you what, it really tickles my fancy. As always, I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Ron Jam, joined by the man, the myth, the legend himself, El Tigre. I know I've been looking forward to this episode for a while. Tyler, how about you?
Samesies, super samesies. I have been waiting since Friday to talk with you about this movie, and I know that you feel the same way. So we're in the same boat.
Dude, to paraphrase myself from last week, I am turtle-heading my enthusiasm about this movie, or our talk about this movie, not to give anything away. Oh, man. All right. So now that we're here, we got the hellos done. We got to warm up, buddy. What do you got? Anything for me?
We're going to warm it up here. So one that we might have honestly spoken about this before. I know that you've probably joking about it before we podcasted, when we used to just work out and just blast music and just talk about movies. And you'd usually end with you saying, man, we should really start a podcast. And we eventually did.
And for our listeners, those workouts would be 3 to 4 hours long of like 2 working sets, because we would just stand around and shoot the shit for so long.
True story. But one of those topics, I believe, was about Keanu Reeves. And in a recent interview, now that he's going on tour with the release of Matrix, and he basically expressed interest in joining the MCU. So what would you like to see him if he ever did join the MCU?
That's interesting. I mean, we all know Keanu looks great. He's immortal and he's great at martial arts, but he is also almost 60. So I would really love to see him slot into a character that doesn't necessarily have to be so physical or even physical at all. Like for a CG character, I think his voice and his delivery would be great for like a Silver Surfer.
That's a good one.
Or something cosmic, I think would be fun. People do fan art of him as Wolverine, and I'm like, you guys, you're not going to slot in a guy 10 years older than the last Wolverine as the next Wolverine.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. But I would love to see him do a Silver Surfer. And I also think that gives him the freedom to just do nice stuff, which is what he's known for in his personal life.
Yeah, I agree. I think John Wick 3, I feel like that was the first of that whole series. I was like, I kind of see him showing his age there. Those punches are looking a little bit slower. Not trying to say anything mean about Keanu. I love Keanu.
I think he could beat us both up at once, probably.
Easily he could crush us, and he's a good person. Good heart. So Silver Surfer was listed in this article that I saw. Same comment you made about Wolverine and the age. I'm trying to remember the last one, but I think a character where he does lend his voice to is a good choice by you. So good one right there.
Real quick, another note to make though. Keanu is great. Like you said, he's showing his age. And in all fairness, he's older than my dad. So come on, Keanu. We love you, man. We're not trying to talk shit.
For Keanu, if you're listening, Ron does not want you to beat him up in the middle of the night.
Please don't.
Next director that's getting all the interviews, got a movie coming out this weekend as well, is Matthew Vaughn. Popular director. I'm a fan of his. And I think we have before. We talked about the whole Kingsman. One of the announcements I remember years ago was when they were talking about the spin-off series, the prequel. And he basically said in one of these interviews that Henry Cavill, who is a part of a new movie that he's in pre-production with, that he was essentially born to play James Bond. A little backstory to this, I believe Henry Cavill was once titled or labeled as the most unlucky man in Hollywood because the writer of the Twilight series said that she wrote that with him in mind. But then now look back at James Bond, he was actually in the running for it, but was said to be too young. At the moment, he is the same age as Daniel Craig when he was cast as James Bond. So do you think that Henry Cavill would make a good James Bond?
All right, so 3 points off of that. 1, I forgot The King's Man was coming out. 2, Henry Cavill, though he may be the same age as Daniel Craig was, Daniel Craig looked 15 years older than Henry Cavill does right now. And 3, I think acting-wise and like personality, he would make a great James Bond. I know you and I are both big fans of Man from U.N.C.L.E. If you just switch his accent back to British, he's doing James Bond.
Yeah.
The only thing is, Henry Cavill is a massive dude. He's extremely muscular. He's tall, and he looks like Henry Cavill. I know people don't really put this together in their head, but James Bond is a spy. He's supposed to be able to show up and blend in. And when you're that big and that good looking, it's kind of hard to do that. Trust me and Tyler deal with this all the time. We can't go anywhere without standing out.
That's a good one. But I think with Henry Cavill, exactly what you said. We are fans of Man from U.N.C.L.E. and he plays a spy in it. Great role. And I think he's one of those actors that people like. I know that he got pretty popular with the gaming world when didn't he do like a YouTube video where he built a computer, a gaming computer, and people like went crazy about it?
Yeah, he did like a Twitch live stream and he built a computer and was just all jacked the whole time. Everyone was...
So fans love him.
Yeah.
I think it would be great if he was James Bond. I think in the article that I read that he was maybe second in like odds and number one was Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy's a hard one for me because I think that when we go back to rock and roll, I keep mentioning rock and roll, and I feel like in every podcast episode, but like that's where I learned about him.
You got to do a rock and roll review or something at this point.
I should. It was one of my faves, but back then I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see that Tom Hardy potentially being a James Bond. He's a lot more slimmer than what he looks like now. But I think that his acting chops have probably improved since then, which makes him an obvious choice for many people. But I don't know. I don't know which one I would put in the lead. I honestly don't think either one is going to get it. But who knows? Who honestly knows these days?
Yeah. I think they'll probably go with an unknown, which is, I feel like, the way to go. A slightly younger, unknown actor, let them grow into the role and let them be James Bond.
Yeah, that's a good one. Moving on here, and we are going to talk more about Spider-Man. This episode is all about Spider-Man once we get there. But before, a little bit of piece of news that caught my eye that I thought would be fun to throw in here was about how Tom Holland basically put a little doubt on people, basically saying that he's unsure if he's going to be returning to the mix for the next trilogy, even though Spider-Man 4 is supposedly already in pre-production and they're really working to get those going, partially probably because he, at the moment, is 25 years old. And if they want to try to keep him in the series before he goes over 30, even though he looks like he's 18, but that's besides the point. Do you think that this is a ploy to maybe negotiate a little bit more for him, or do you think there's a chance that he won't return as Spider-Man?
Yeah, I think it might be a little of both. Like you said, he does look quite young still, but looking at his appearance in Civil War versus now, I mean, it has been 6 years and it went from him being 19 to being 25. He does look significantly different. He still is a very young looking man, but he does look significantly different. And you think about it, if you had to do this incredibly grueling, like year at a time job where you're away from your friends and family for, the first half of your 20s, you might be thinking, I want to take a break too, I read that he wants to take, like you said, a full break from acting and maybe start a family. And I think it's as good a time as any. This trilogy's going on, the Infinity Saga's over. He is young enough that if they waited a couple years, he'd still look young. It's not going to be like You mentioned this last week in the first Maguire films where everybody looked 35 because they were.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be that scenario. And even then, at this point in the movies, he's even finishing high school. So it's like, okay, you can look like a 30-year-old in college. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my response for later on because I don't want to jump too much into that. But good response there, Ronald.
Yeah, I was tiptoeing, man. I was freaking tiptoeing not to give anything away.
So moving on with the next piece of news here. Hocus Pocus 2 is in the works. They got photos releasing that are leaking. And one of the movies that was part of your WTF moment last week was the Sex and the City one. So the reason why I'm putting these pieces together, not because they have that Sarah Jessica Parker is a part of both of them, but do you think that Hocus Pocus 2 coming back into the mix, do you think the audience will still care? Are they going to be around to really go to the movies, or if it's even going to streaming first, do you think that they're going to really care?
I think that there is a large swath of 27 to 39-year-old females who will absolutely love this because I've been to a lot of Hocus Pocus 1 Halloween screenings, and that's what the crowd is full of for the most part. Not to generalize too much, but that's what the crowd looks like. And if those same people that are paying $30 to see this 20-year-old movie show up to watch this one once, I think it'll do okay. It'll recoup its budget. The fans will show up. I don't know if there's anything more to tell in the story. Spoiler alert, they turn to ash at the end. So let's see what they do.
That's a good point. Both of your points are very valid. With this one, I'm not thinking more in terms of like Jumanji where they do like a reboot, but this just being Hocus Pocus 2. You're trying to really pull out all the emotions, trying to get people to come back, and I'm just kind of getting a little bit of flop from it, but that's just me. I could be a little bit of a pessimist there, so we'll move on with it. Next piece of news that kind of caught my eyes was about Dan Aykroyd. So we already reviewed Ghostbusters in this podcast, and he was talking about how he thinks that the original, or there's only 3 of them now, that they should be a part of the team moving forward. And and it could just be the headline, because as I dived into it, there are segments in terms of how they set it up of potentially doing a follow-up to this reboot, that they could be a part of it. But do you think that the original cast should be more part of it, or this cast that was part of the reboot?
I think everybody, hopefully you've seen the movie. But at the end, it kind of sets up that Ernie Hudson's character is going to be bankrolling it. I think with that in mind, it would be really cool to have Ernie Hudson, who, by the way, is 75 years old. The guy looks phenomenal. He looks exactly the same as he did in 84. He's just packed on probably 20 pounds of muscle in his arms.
Yep.
The guy's a house. Anyway, to have Ernie Hudson bankrolling the group and to have him kind of work as their main mentor and have, some of the other, whether it be Aykroyd or Bill Murray, come in and out to help them out or just mentor or give words of advice. I feel like that's the way to do it because all these guys are in their late 60s, mid 70s. So to start a new franchise that won't be happening for at least 2 or 3 years from now with people of that age is just a weird bet. And we don't even know if these guys are going to want to still be acting in a few years because they have families and they have lives.
Yeah, good points. All valid points there. Moving to the last piece of news that I got for you here, and this one is an original piece of news. I didn't see a headline for it, but something that kind of sparked my interest or that piqued in terms of what things coming up this week were that this weekend, and I'll talk about them later on when we talk about movies I'm going to see, but I want to be seeing Matrix coming up. But at the same time, what I noticed is that The Matrix is not getting some of the prime times for the weekend.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not getting prime times, not getting a lot of the big screens, and there's competition. So it made me really think about some of the conversations that we've had on this podcast about release dates, about blockbuster movies. So one of the things that really came to my mind was that, do you think that competition will now be a thing for release dates moving forward?
I think so. Honestly, like I said, King's Man, doesn't it come out this weekend as well?
Yeah.
I had no idea it was still coming out. And I was looking at my tickets for The Matrix and they were kind of sparse as far as the showings. Yeah. I think both of them screwed up by coming out a week after Spider-Man. And this is going to segue to my one piece of news. Spider-Man had a huge opening. We'll discuss that in detail in a second. But they both kind of screwed up by that because there is a lot of crossover in their target audiences. I think it's already been, Marvel kind of stakes theirs out years in advance so people can get the hell out of the way. But yeah, I think definitely it was a mistake to release this weekend, although I am excited for one of those two movies. I believe it's going to be a race to try to secure big dates when people are going to be free. It definitely will be.
Yeah, I think that in 2022, I think that will now be something. 2023, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But in 2022, I think you could potentially see movies moving so they don't have to compete with each other, especially around this time, Thanksgiving, Christmas, where people are flooding to the theaters. That you're going to see less competition. Before it didn't really matter; people would go see them nonstop, and so now I think that we will see dates just be moved out, which is kind of not a bad thing for the moviegoer. That you don't have to make a decision. Like, am I going to see this weekend, or I'll just next week I'll just go see it. I personally like when I I can just line up my movies for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's pretty nice that way, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think the other thing that is starting to change the way release dates are fought over is because if you remember last year when HBO Max did their launch and they announced all these titles that were going straight to streaming when they had no idea if theaters were going to be opened up. Well, as theaters started to come back, they started moving them back into theatrical releases, but they were already, set on dates that were taken. So things started to get jumbled up. And I think that's where we end up where we are now because these products, they end up overlapping with each other. And I know the Kingsmen got kind of lost in the shuffle too, because they were a Fox property. And so when Fox was purchased by Disney, they don't care. They didn't produce it. They just put it out whenever. So they're basically putting it up against their own movie. Cause they're like, well, if you see it, great. Cause we make the money. If you don't, we don't care. We made the other one that's making all the money.
Yeah. Kind of agree with some of those. I will differ that I feel like I've seen a lot of promotions for the Kingsmen, and I kind of was surprised that I had already booked my Kingsman tickets about a month ago, and I actually slacked on my Matrix tickets.
Wow.
And I blew it on that one, but that's how I actually came to this last question. But I thought that over the last month, I feel like I've seen a lot of promotion for the Kingsman, more than I feel like I've seen 2 trailers for the Matrix, and
I feel like that's a good thing, though. I don't want to know anything about this Matrix. I want to go in and be surprised.
I've seen a lot of fans say very similar things, but I think we could save that for when we review the Matrix.
Okay. All right. I have one piece of news that does dovetail from what we just talked about. It's that the Spider-Man No Way Home global box office first weekend reports have come in, and it has made $587.2 million, which is the 3rd highest opening of all time. Obviously the biggest one since the pandemic. Tyler, any thoughts?
Gonna save what I do want to say for once we review it. It was pretty awesome to be in the theater with fans cheering. And I saw it a day after it came out. I saw it on Friday, not on Thursday. And it's awesome to see the fans coming back for that. And I know that there was a little worry with different things with the pandemic, but good for movies. And I think that it's a good sign for hopefully blockbusters going forward.
Agreed. All right. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Don't say anything more.
We're going to ruin something. All right. We're going to move into our trailer segment. And in our show notes, I left a note for both Tyler and myself that under trailers, it said, who cares? Spider-Man came out. But I do have 3 trailers to talk about. Tyler, do you have any trailers to talk about?
3 trailers? Where are you getting these trailers?
In front of Spider-Man.
Oh, I've seen all those. And I'm just going to, if you're going to say any of the ones that I saw, I'm just going to say huge snore. But please continue.
Okay. So to preface this, I know it's not my WTF moment, but all 3 of these trailers were WTFs. Okay. So the first one, it's a movie called Ambulance, but the L.A. in ambulance is capitalized, and it's starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and it's directed by freaking Michael Bay. And we watched this trailer, and my wife was like, dude, what is going on? Why the fuck did they make this movie? And so we saw that, and I was like, I don't know. I'll watch it when it comes to streaming. It looks like a lot of explosions. Who cares? And then the very next trailer that came on was starring Channing Tatum and a German Shepherd, and it's called Dog. And we were like, what? We thought we had fallen asleep and woke up in a parallel universe, because it was literally like, what the actual fuck is this movie about? Who's it for? Why did they make this? Is Charming Tatum okay? Like, is everybody okay? Oh, and the third one, Tyler, I know you'll be happy. I saw the trailer. Thor Moonfall. It was glorious. Yeah, and I gotta say, fans, movie buffs, fellow film and fitness freaks, aficionados, and fanatics, I was not disappointed. It actually was a wrinkle to the story I did not see coming. The moon has some sort of sentient being living in it that's attacking us. Tyler hid that from me. Oh, and this movie looks just chef's kiss, primo molto bene. I can't wait to not watch it.
Oh boy, I'm just gonna make one note on the dog one because I felt bad, I was making a joke about it because I'm sure there are people who are be out there that like it, but I was thinking I feel like people or actors when they are struggling to get movies, they do a dog movie. They're like, oh man, I think I'm
Marley
done.
and Me.
I think I'm done in Hollywood. I'm gonna do a dog movie. Let me schedule that for me.
I think you're onto something because in acting, there's a saying that goes, never work with animals or children. So you're like hurting when you're like, I'll do both. I'm gonna do a cheaper by the dozen, but it's also a 101 Dalmatian sequel.
Oh boy, that's painful.
Yeah, it was.
With the ambulance one, I've seen that one at least 5 times, and I was just so confused watching it. With that one, honestly, now that I'm re-jogging through my memory from watching it this last time, what popped in my head was why does every Michael Bay movie, why are they driving through the sewers of Los Angeles, the LA River? Why is every single one in the LA River? Is there nowhere else to drive? Do they not? Does LA not have freeways? Come on now,
Tyler. You've lived in LA before. You know these freeways are garbage. The LA River is the only way to get around.
Every movie they're driving through it. Transformers, every single one.
It's true. He's going to drive to the LA River. He's going to explode some cars. Everything's going to be orange. And there's a scene in the trailer where the main actress in the movie, I forget, I try to block it out of my head, but she gets out of the car and Michael Bay did his signature 360 spin around. And it was so goofy. I laughed out loud. I was like, oh my gosh, this is rough.
The other part of that trailer where they used a drone to zoom under a car that was burning or something. Mm-hmm. And it's but why? Why did you have to do that? And I just don't get it. Why is that necessary?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Whew. The only good news is, nope, I couldn't think of any. There's no good news.
I would say our next segment is a positive because of the time of the year. So we'll use that as good news moving forward.
Okay. Do you want me to do a little transition song for us?
I've been waiting to hear it.
All right. It's the most movie buffs time of the year. Hear the weights clinging, dinging, and everyone singing. You be of good cheer. It's the most movie buffs time of the year. I literally just made that up. Did you like
that? That wasn't actually bad. I'll give you that one.
I made up the lyrics and everything.
The randomness that goes through your brain, that was not bad at all. I'll give you that one.
Thank you. So with that, our Get to Know the Movie Buff segment this week, we'll be talking about each of us baby boys. We're going to be talking about our favorite Xmas movies of all time. We're going to do a top 5 list. So with that, Tyler, give us number 5.
So a couple notes to my list that have to be put out there. I was actually surprised that I didn't think that this was going to be something that was that hard. But then when I started researching holiday movies, I'm like, holy crap, there's more than 5 that I actually like. And I'm like, did I just become a family man? What's going on here? Am I just all of a sudden just be that man with all his cats and that's my family? But actually pretty hard for me to put this list together. And I think I changed it quite a few times. The second note that I have to point out that you will not find one Will Ferrell movie on my list. If you want to, yeah. And I have not watched a Will Ferrell movie since 2016. This is when the ownership group of the MLS club, LAFC, was announced. And I'm not like Will Ferrell where I flip-flop my alliances and all of a sudden, after going to Galaxy games for years, rocking the Galaxy, switch to LAFC. So listeners, be aware. I will find out if you pull that nonsense with me.
I got to say, everybody, this is the first I didn't know Tyler even liked football.
What are you talking about? You know that I like the Galaxy and that I watch the Galaxy and I go to Galaxy games. When I used to be a season ticket holder.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't know you liked it. I thought you just did it.
Okay.
Oh, geez, Louise.
Now I'll get to my list.
Learn something new every day.
So this is where it became hard, and I feel like giving my list. Some of it makes me seem like I'm a man-child, and probably like my first one, my number 5, is Arthur Christmas. Have you ever seen Arthur Christmas?
Don't even know what you're talking about.
So James McAvoy, he basically plays like the unlikely option to take over as Santa, and he goes and like saves Christmas.
Oh,
yeah. If you didn't know, go check it out. I feel like it's a very underrated Christmas movie, and especially if you see like who's in it, you're James McAvoy. What? Yeah. Anyways,
back, oh boy.
Yeah, it's pretty good, and it beat out some of my honorable mentions, which I'll throw in at the end.
This guy did a top 9 list.
I seriously have. I could have done easily a 9. And number 4, Rise of the Guardians. You a fan?
Guardians of the Galaxy?
See, no idea. Underrated holiday movie. I remember when we actually saw this in the theaters. I feel like my wife and I were maybe one of 2 couples in there. Like there was nobody seeing it, and it's underrated. Huge ensemble cast. Has Chris Pine, Hugh Jackman, Jude Law, Isla Fisher, Alec Baldwin. Can't really see Alec Baldwin's name anymore. But essentially, they're like the guardians of the universe, and they go around to save innocents. So like Chris Pine is Jack Frost. Let me think. Alec Baldwin is Santa. I think Isla Fisher is like the Tooth Fairy. Hugh Jackman is...
I gotta tell you, this movie sounds so boring.
He's the Easter Bunny. You gotta check it out.
I will not.
I liked it, and it is my number 4.
Ooh, you know I'm more of a Halloween baby than a Christmas boy.
Yeah, that's true. You dress up for like a week. Loser.
Yeah,
number 3. And I actually like wanted to do like a coin flip for this one because I was like, I like both of them, but I'm gonna give this one on the list. I'm gonna go with the original Home Alone, and yeah, because I do like when he goes to New York, and I do like that story. But I was like, Home Alone, got to go with the original. I feel like I was like terrified when I first saw that when I was like a kid, like the whole basement scene. Like the whole furnace, it's gonna eat you, it's gonna kill you, and I feel like I never wanted to like eat pizza because like the delivery man was gonna come get you. Scary stuff in that movie, but now that I'm an adult, it's fun to watch. So number 3 for me.
Nice.
Number 2, and this is probably more just I like Billy Bob Thornton just being a d-bag, but Bad Santa, original Bad Santa. I feel like there was like a streak of Billy Bob Thornton movies where they just said, hey, just go be a D-bag and we'll put you in different costumes. Like when he did Bad Santa, then he did the Bad News Bears, literally the same character. But in this one, he's a Santa. I like those movies. He's hilarious. And then last one, number 1 for me is Jingle All the Way. Anything with Arnold, can't pass up. And so many lines from it. And when you watch it back, I feel like even as an adult, you can still like say every single line from it and you just enjoy it.
All right. Well, I'm going to go straight from Tyler's top 9 into my top 3 because obviously I didn't follow the rules. And I'm going to go with Jingle All the Way. That was actually my number 1, but I'll start it right here. Dude, 1996, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sinbad, Windbreakers, Phil Hartman, Cookies, Rita Wilson, directed by Brian Levant. Dude, I mess with this movie hardcore. I'm trying not to cuss, but I'm gonna anyway. I fucks this movie so hardcore. It's badass. I love that they don't even mention that Arnold Schwarzenegger is 6'3" and 230-pound bodybuilder with an Austrian accent. Why is that? He's just a businessman who sells mattresses. Who cares?
No biggie.
No, but don't worry about it. Also, at the end, when he puts the suit on, is it magic? How does he actually fly? How does he shoot his fist off?
Because he's Arnold. Duh.
Yeah, you're right, dude. I love that movie. Coming in at number 2, this order doesn't matter. Who cares? Number 2, I'm going to go that Nightmare Before Christmas. It's both a Halloween movie and a Christmas movie. That's how it made this list for me.
Hard pass.
It's a 1993 film directed by Henry Selick. It's not directed by Tim Burton. Don't fucking tell me it's directed by Tim Burton. I know it's called Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas because he produced it. He plays the dog Zero. He wrote the script. It was his idea, but it was not directed by him. It was directed by Henry Selick. I like that movie. I don't even love that movie. I like it. I just figured I want to get closer to a top 5 list.
No, don't even put that anywhere near me. That movie is a horror movie. It's terrifying for kids. Tell me your next one.
Number one, and Tyler's going to love this. All right, Tyler, I want you to guess. It's a 2003 film starring the star of New Girl, the guy from Up, one of the guys from The Godfather, and a guy from Iron Man directed it. The lead actor is the male Spartan cheerleader from Saturday Night Live. He's one of the Butabi brothers. It's Will Ferrell, baby. We're talking about Elf.
No.
I was like so excited when I heard you spout your vitriol against Will Ferrell. I'm like,
I might have to edit that out just so that I fully complete my anti-Will Ferrell movie lists.
I'm going to keep yelling that Elf is number one, Will Ferrell rules over and over again. So you won't there'll be no space. It's going to ruin all the flow and be like, and what I really thought about Spider-Man is that Elf is number one, Will Ferrell rules, especially at the point where Elf comes out and he fixes Santa's sleigh. That was my favorite part of Spider-Man.
No loyalty at all. I'm going to give my honorable mentions here because actually one of them, my wife bought this week and it's an underrated one. Last Christmas. Did you see that one?
Tell me about it.
Khaleesi. Basically, it's all about like the George Michael song.
I heard that was one of the worst movies of the year when it came out. I think it did like $4 million and it was all in Holland.
I think probably because the director, what was his name? Paul something. That the one that did the Ghostbusters.
I love Paul something. Paul Feig.
Yeah, there you go. I feel like he got a lot of flack over the last couple of years, ever since he did that reboot of Ghostbusters. That nobody likes him.
Poor
but
guy.
I think it's not bad. Home Alone 2 made my list of honorable mentions. The Holiday, The Family Man, which I actually watched last night with Nicolas Cage.
Oh yeah, I like that movie.
I don't know why I like it. I can't even tell you why I like it, but I do.
I can tell you why I don't like that movie.
Why is that?
So it came out when I was in fourth grade, and I watched it for the first time like 3 days after I had gotten out of the hospital for breaking both my radius and ulna. My arm was in a cast, and I was on freaking Vicodins and Perkies, sitting on the couch, just miserable, ruining my Christmas vacation. And this movie was on. I was like, "Fuck this movie, bro."
So that's why you don't like it?
Yeah, dude. I couldn't tell you anything. Couldn't tell you anything about the movie. I was just so upset.
Interesting. Well, other ones, Four Christmases, Love Actually. I mean, all great movies. Hard to make it into a top 5 though for me.
I feel like I should have let you go through all 9 and then wrote a list in my head because I actually do like The Holiday. All right. So I think we're warm. Is it time?
It's time. We've been waiting.
That big dog working set. And now we're going to review Spider-Man No Way Home, home. All right. That was stupid. All right. So I'll give the directors and cast because in Tyler's notes, I feel like he's got too much information in his cast and I want to save it for spoilers. So it is directed by John Watts, who obviously directed Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home, and is directing the upcoming Fantastic Four movie for Marvel. It stars Tom Holland as Spider-Man, Zendaya as MJ, Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, and Jacob Batalon as Ned Leeds. And I won't go any more into cast than that. The premise of the film is as follows. After being framed for the crimes and eventual death of Mysterio, Spider-Man is revealed to be Peter Parker. This revelation sends Peter's life spiraling out of control. And in his desperation, in a last-ditch bid, he asks Doctor Strange to cast a spell to make everyone forget he was ever Spider-Man. But when magic is involved, things don't always go as planned. Peter must face his demons and learn if he has what it takes to be the hero the world needs. Now, Tyler, let's kick it off with our spoiler-free review. Go ahead, bud. So I'm going to stop you right there. I'll give my spoiler-free review. And my spoiler review is as follows. It's lit. That's all I got for non-spoilers.
Oh, boy. I'm going to say that I don't know about you, because I know that you are a weirdo and you like to sit in weird spots in the theater.
In the back, like a normal person.
In the back corner, away from everybody.
Affirmative.
I was sitting next to a little kid, and I think he was with his grandma. And I was actually pretty stoked to see that a little kid, because I heard him like talking about like backstory, characters, like even like fan stuff that I feel like you, being the weirdo that you are, like all this like deep cut stuff that you always like text me or you like send me on Instagram. I feel like he knew some of that stuff. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, and I think he even had like a homemade like Spider-Man shirt on, like a white one that he like maybe like took a picture and like, I don't even know what that's called, but he made his own shirt.
He screen printed it himself.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. The one negative of this was that as we were literally walking out of the theater, his grandma goes on FaceTime and literally just starts like screaming out all the spoilers for the movies. Oh my God. It's not a secret.
Why didn't you punch this old lady?
I'm just going to say what she said. So I'm going to give a spoiler.
Don't say none of it. It's not, we're on spoiler review yet.
Okay. I'll save it.
I will jump off that though. We walked into our Thursday night showing and people were walking out. My wife was like, babe, guard up. So I put my hands over my ears and was going, la, 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 la. Because I'm not trying to get in a fist fight on the way into this movie, but you ruin it for me. You're getting bopped out. I went to go see Logan on Thursday night at 7 p.m., but there happened to be 5 p.m. showings. And some dickhead walks out and gets in the elevator with us. So I forget why we're going to get dinner before we walk. Some dickhead walks out and like talking to his buddy loud as hell. And spoiler alert for Logan, it's 5 years old. He goes, damn, that was a good movie. It's crazy the way they killed him at the end when he fought his clone and they shot him in the head and then he got stabbed.
Who does that?
And I was like, bro. And he looked and was like, oh, dude, I'm so sorry. And my family had to restrain me because I was heated.
Why would somebody do that? Even so, we went to like lunch on like Saturday still. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to talk about the movie that loud because I didn't want anybody to listen in. I don't want to root for anybody. Yeah. I hate to talk about like any of the characters, any of the bad guys that are in the movie, and for them to hear it. I literally was like whispering at this lunch because I didn't want anybody to hear.
That's funny. Yeah, you got to be careful, man. When you care, people care back, and watch out for the dickheads out there, like that old broad.
Yeah. Well, let me finish that story because there's a piece to it that's a small vent for me about fandom. And the reason why I like seeing young fans is because that is like a new generation of kids coming in. And that's what these new movies, these reboots do. They get new people interested in it. This little 12-year-old has no idea about, I mean, he does know about now, but like all this drama that goes on. The best thing always comes to my mind is like, all like the 40 and 50-year-olds that got all butthurt when they casted for Solo and they're putting out these memes, not my Solo. Come on. New movies are coming out, the character that you love, and I'm already seeing it for like Boba Fett on like Twitter these days. Okay. That like they're like, oh, Boba Fett already had a story. I'm just over Star Wars. Are you kidding me? Like new people are getting interested in this stuff and they're going to make more properties for it. Oh, but they're just trying to make money. Who cares? Don't you want to see your character that you like more? It just blows my mind.
Agreed, man.
I probably should have saved that for the WTF moment. But anyways, talking about the movie, I honestly thought that with No Way Home, that it was some of the best pacing I've seen in a while with the movie. It gets into it. You see a lot of exciting stuff. There's something I wanted to say there, but I'm waiting till we talk about spoilers. And they get into it really quickly. And I mean, my only negative for pacing was probably the end probably segment, but it's always hard to close out a movie like that where you have so much action, there's so many characters that you're trying to figure a way to wrap it so that nobody gets mad about it. But other than that, I thought the pacing was pretty darn solid. What do you think?
I agree. For a movie where so much shit happens, it really was well paced. It didn't, I mean, we're not going to talk about it in detail, but in the trailers, you see there's quite a few villains. It didn't get Spider-Man 3. It didn't get Amazing Spider-Man 2. It didn't get bogged down with the villains. I felt it had a really good story arc. Even the villains who were introduced ended up all had decent character arcs. They weren't just one dimensional. And I thought that was a really cool trick for them to pull. I'm going to go ahead and give my recommendation of, yeah, you should see it because it's lit. I don't understand why you asked me, Tyler, if I should recommend it. I thought I made it crystal clear earlier. It's lit. So go see it. That's the last thing I'm going to say before spoilers after Tyler says his next little bit.
Continuing on with that, with the cast, to have that many A-list actors a part of it, I think that's a good example of how to put all those pieces together. And could be giving Eternals a bad shake by bringing them into this review.
Leave them alone.
But they had to give a lot of backstory to it with No Way Home. we kind of already knew the characters of I'm going to call it Sinister Five, but with No Way Home, they gave everybody enough screen time, enough story to build. And for me personally, looking at the future now, I'm not going into speculation yet, but like with Fantastic Four, as Ron mentioned, this is the director that's going to be taking over Fantastic Four, which we all know the past three, not so good. And it builds a little confidence in my book. That's kind of what I walked with. Okay, I'm kind of excited for Fantastic Four. You kind of feel the same?
I am. I have a good feeling about it. Like, we know John Watts knows what he's doing, and we saw that he can play ball with not only Marvel's, big plan, but also he's working with Sony too on the cross production of the Spider-Man films. And he's, for me, I think he's batting 1,000. Like, all the movies have been quality. Yeah. I know some people say they're not Spider-Man enough or this or that, but I think they're all really good movies.
Yeah, I agree. A couple more things about Willem Dafoe for me was that not having the mask, getting rid of that at the beginning, it's literally why you cast somebody of his caliber. His acting, seeing his facial expressions was just next level for me. I was just blown away with it. That his performance was one of the best, in my opinion, with the whole Green Goblin and everything a part of you. Like, wow, yeah, that's why he's this person.
Yeah, and I feel like it does a great job of picking up the same, like, it felt like the same guy. It wasn't like, oh, this is whatever. But the other thing, I've been saying this for years, since 2002. You don't cast a man with a face of a goblin and then put a bike helmet on him. And they heard me. They said, yeah, he looks like a goblin. Don't give him a mask.
Well, you made a good point there. That's actually one of the questions I had for you is about, though, Electro, like with continuing on with the character, like the continuation of it, because I don't know if I've said it in the podcast, but I'm not a comic book person. I do read a lot online. Like, I'll read tons on like wiki stuff, but with Electro, his character was a little different for me. And then that's not a spoiler. They had him in the freaking trailers, so don't come at me with that. But
unfortunately, they had him in the trailer.
He seemed much more different, I'll say, than Spider-Man 2. So was he at all comic book accurate, or do you think it was a little more too ad lib?
I don't want to give away too much, but neither versions we've seen are very comic book accurate. Max Dillon in the comic books, and like I said, I talked about it last week with the cartoon, was actually quite like 1-to-1 comic book accurate. But usually he's kind of just like a dickhead criminal who accidentally gets these powers. And he's a real like, yeah, watch out, Spider-Man, I'm going to shoot you with lightning over here, man. That kind of guy. So he's always been, in the comic books, obviously, as time goes on, they've made him more multifaceted. But in his inception and in the comic books and cartoons up until like the mid 2000s, early 2000s, he was kind of just a guy who shot lightning and didn't really have a personality other than being bad.
Okay. Interesting.
And we can talk about more of what I thought about the Max Dillon in this one when we get to spoilers for sure.
Ronald, it's that time. Hit the button.
Spoiler alert. The spoiler robot just rode a motorcycle up the 101. He hit a parked car, caught 15 feet of air, then skid to a stop, used that momentum to catapult up 6 floors to where my house is located onto my balcony, yelled spoiler, and then exploded. It was a sight to behold. I got to tell you, the only thing better was Spider-Man Far From Home. So now we're in spoiler section, ladies and gentlemen, friends and foes. We're going to go unadulterated, full spoilers. I'm going to start staying spoiler shit right now. Tobey Maguire, it was cool to see him back. Andrew Garfield, it was great to see him back. One of my favorite scenes, I'm going to skip way ahead. I've been waiting to talk about this, when they're getting ready to fight at the end on the Statue of Liberty. And he goes, I got this back thing. And he goes, what? He's like, yeah, my back. And then he cracks his back, which is obviously a callback to Spider-Man 2 when he's trying to get his mojo back. And he's running from building to building. And he takes a big leap from building to building that he does actually in Spider-Man 1, where he's testing his powers. And he's in the air and he goes, I'm back. I'm back. And then halfway through, he realizes, oh no, my powers are still failing me. And then he falls about 15 floors, falls on a little Toyota, hits the ground. He goes, oh, my back, my back. And the exact spot where he was hurt in that movie, and he yelled, my back, he said it and held this time, which is also a fun callback to Spider-Man 2 almost was starring Jake Gyllenhaal, because Tobey Maguire actually injured his back really badly on a set of Seabiscuit and was almost unable to return. But when they said, here, take all this money, and they hit him in the face with 15 stacks of $1 million bills, he was like, I think my back will be okay. Go ahead, Tyler.
Well, that's a good segue because I'm glad that you led with throwing out that Tobey Maguire's in it. Andrew Garfield is also in it. And as we walked out, one of the questions that my wife asked me was who my favorite Spider-Man was in the movie. And I'm just going to put this out there that I feel like when I hear that certain actors are D-bags, they kind of fall down my rankings.
Yeah.
Didn't even process in my head that Tobey Maguire would be my favorite. It was like, okay, he's already in third in my book. But did you get those feels? And do you have actually a favorite Spider-Man from those?
So yeah, I got big emotions seeing all of them. We talked about this last week, how big of a part of my life Spider-Man 1 and 2 was. The Amazing Spider-Man weren't great movies, but by all accounts, Andrew Garfield is a very kind, like generous person. And you can look on Instagram right now and it's making the rounds because he's in this movie. But in between takes of Amazing Spider-Man, when they were shooting outside, he'd keep his costume on and go to the park and just hang out with kids and like go do pictures and play basketball games. And for Comic-Cons, he would go dressed as Spider-Man and hide in the crowd to ask questions on panels. And you could tell he really loved it. And he even has said, he's like, even though people didn't love the movies and I might not have loved how they went, I am very blessed to have played my childhood hero and I wouldn't ask for anything else. And I feel like that's really cool to hear because, like you said, when people are dickheads, they're like, dude, how are you walking around being a douche to people? Like you're literally getting paid stacks of $1 million bills to go have fun and just like mess around all day and play these characters that mean so much to people. Same thing with Tom Holland. By all accounts, he's a very nice guy. Like he does he's always at children's hospitals in costumes. So I feel like they're both tied for number one. And whoever plays Miles Morales is number 2 in the Into the Spider-Verse. Jake Johnson is Peter B. Parker is number 3, and then number 6 is going to be Toby, because number 4 is going to be for Oscar Isaac as Spider-Man 2099, and number 5 I'll leave open whoever plays Miles in live action.
That's funny. That's a good one. One of the things that I didn't even think about, and you are hitting it on the nose, that people love Andrew Garfield, that I've even seen people like pushing for Amazing Spider-Man 3. And I'm just like, really? Like, do you really want that? Don't get me wrong. It was pretty cool seeing him. That's going to be one of the things that I'm going to bring up later on for like favorite scenes. But I never crossed my mind that I want to see an Amazing Spider-Man 3 at all.
Okay. So with that in mind, I'm actually going to jump ahead a little bit because I feel like this is the perfect time to ask. Do you think they'll do anything with these characters? Because Marvel has actually kind of spoiled the movie a little bit on their own, because on their website, they have key art for both Toby and Andrew Spider-Mans that are listed on like the list of characters for the MCU. And Toby is listed as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and Andrew's listed as the Amazing Spider-Man. So it's kind of seeming like I mean, with this going on and being this giant movie, it's as good a time as any to do the other ones because we know it's huge. We know Spider-Verse works. They're doing a whole series of Spider-Verse movies. So I feel like it's a good time. Do you want to see those at all? And then I have one more thing to add to that.
I personally don't want to see an Amazing Spider-Man 3. That's just me.
Even if Marvel helps make it good?
If Marvel is a part of it, I think it has a much better shot. And I would go see that. I think we've joked about that with Sony and what they do with characters, and that's part of why I don't want them to do it. The whole thing that I've seen recently is about Venom potentially being in Andrew Garfield's universe, and I'm trying to like wrap my brain around that one. But in terms of timing, I mean, right now, and it's thanks to Marvel, this whole multiverse, and even looking at even DC properties. I mean, how many freaking Batmans do we have? So why couldn't we have 3 Spider-Mans? Just putting that out there.
And we have at least 2 or 3 Supermen going on, right? We have Brandon Routh and Tyler Hoechlin on TV. We have Henry Cavill.
Don't bring your CW stuff into this podcast. No,
and then we have
what do I say?
We have the Val Zod TV show or movie coming to HBO Max. So we have 4 Supermans going right now. Like, let's do Spider-Man. Now, to piggyback, I keep saying that. I hate saying that. So to jump back to what you were saying earlier, you would see
I don't give you piggyback rides.
Oh, okay. Well, not anymore because you moved away. But to jump on your back and get carried around about, about what you said, you'd see it if Marvel was involved. I got bad news for you, buddy. They won't be.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of things. I'm going to dive off the deep end of speculation and also just real things here. So I talked about the Amazing Spider-Man and Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man being branded on the Marvel website. Now, Sony Pictures has their own website, and they've updated their movie schedules for as far as Venom, Morbius, right? They are considered their Spider-Man. I'm trying to think. It's the cinematic universe of Spider-Man characters. It's like SPUMC would be Spider-Man universe of Marvel characters.
Trying to keep this PG-13 with only one F-bomb per episode. Come on.
So they have branded it as the Spider-Man universe of Marvel characters, right? So what that means is when something like Far From Home, No Way Home happens, because there are MCU characters, including Tom Holland, who's introduced in the MCU in it, that Disney co-produces and distributes, and it can be part of the MCU. Now, as far as Venom, because there are no separate characters outside of Spider-Man related characters, they cannot go under the banner of the MCU. So what I think was done by this, and we see this at the setup at the end, is our Tom Holland Spider-Man is now like a real and true Spider-Man in the way we're used to seeing him, right? But these other two Spider-Men have been reintroduced to this new audience. We've seen how they interact. People are loving it. Mm-hmm. And with the change in their timelines by curing their bad guys, we know that this creates new parallel universes. So the universes they go back to are now different. So they can do anything with it. They can ignore their first ones. They can move on. They can ignore Spider-Man 3. They can ignore Amazing 2. And they can broaden their Spider-Man universe, which is what Sony has wanted all along. So I think that's what is going on here, where Marvel might retain anything they want to do with Tom Holland. They don't have to worry about Sony anymore. And Sony can use, the actors they've had as bad guys in the Marvel ones, and they can go nuts. And one of the things that lends credence to this is if you watch the Morbius trailer, which I know no one wants to watch it, there's a moment, one, where he talks to the Vulture, who's Michael Keaton. Two, there's a moment where he calls himself Venom in order to scare people. Three, there's a point where they mention Venom happening in San Francisco, right? So we know these are happening at once. We know Vulture is somehow there. And then four, he's walking down an alleyway and there is a mural painted of Spider-Man. Now, it is a mural of the Tobey Spider-Man, and it says murderer across the chest. So my theory is that this Spider-Man, it's a mural of the Tobey Spider-Man, but we're actually seeing the Andrew Garfield universe. And when he returns, this will be where he is. And I think he might even be in Morbius, because there is a moment where, apropos of nothing, there's no reason for him to say this other than to set up the future. He says, after Gwen Stacy died, I got bitter. I got angry. I stopped pulling my punches and people got hurt. People got really hurt. So that tells me that this Spider-Man went dark, and maybe he was killing people on the street. He's killing bad guys by accident because he wasn't being careful. And that would show why they're saying murderer in this universe, because we almost know for certain that Tom Holland and the MCU will not be showing up in Morbius, because why the hell would they? Because Morbius looks terrible. Tyler, what do you feel about that?
I think you went a little deep off
I put a tinfoil hat on for that one. Yeah,
you did. You went really far there. I don't know about Andrew Garfield. You do bring up a good point about the line from the movie with pulling punches. I can tell you that I didn't think that at all, and I'm not crazy. But
hey, this from the guy who gives me piggyback rides all the time.
I think that the worrying side of me is that they would, if they did do any of that they would mess it up and they'd make things very confusing. For sure. Yeah. So that's just a piece of me saying, please don't do that. The whole continuation of using these properties in terms of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, I just feel like there's so many moving pieces from like a business, and I can only imagine what they had to do to get all those pieces together for it. That continuing with any of them, that'd be tough. You'd probably bring back other characters. I mean, not as big as like Jake. I'm not saying J.K. Simmons isn't big, but like that was a cool one. That was.
You mean somebody as big as Willem Dafoe or Alfred Molina or Jamie Foxx? Like, they did it, man. They already have them, and I'm sure they just had him sign an extra large contract.
What else have they really been in the last couple of years?
Jamie Foxx is going to be in Spawn. He's starring as Mike Tyson soon. Willem Dafoe is in Lighthouse, and Alfred Molina has been around. Like he's been around.
Yeah. I'm talking more like, why am I blanking on actress that played Gwen Stacy.
Emma Stone.
Yeah, like that's what I'm talking about. But I know that there was a whole story for Amazing Spider-Man 3, and maybe I think if we're talking about speculation in that realm, that could be the one that potentially gets made. I don't know how else but I mean, for myself, looking at speculations as we're talking about it now, the only speculation that I had was that it could potentially be cool to see more Tom Holland going. I know that we talked about that earlier, and this is the part that I left out, was that if he's going into his 30s, that's a part that we could see more of. We did see a little bit of college Spider-Man in 2 and 3 with Tobey Maguire, but more of that, more falling in love. You heard a little bit with the whole Into the Spider-Verse with talking about with the older Spider-Man, with Jake Johnson, with that life, but like going more in that area. Like I know that Tom Holland said in this article that he thinks that no Spider-Man should be, I think, over 30. Like, or if he's 30 years old and he's playing Spider-Man, then something went wrong. But I feel like that would be more to see, like him doing more of that. And then it goes against what we talked about in the last episode about Spider-Man being the focal point of the MCU. So there's a lot of things that they could flesh out more in that area. And I mean, it just makes sense to continue in that realm with seeing a new trilogy of building more from college, having a life, all that kind of stuff, that you just get more character development at a whole nother side, that it wouldn't be like he's just a kid anymore. That's just my opinion on that.
Yeah. And I think we talked about it too, that by the end, we see a Spider-Man who's set up more like the traditional Spider-Man. He's a broke loner. He's trying his best to make ends meet and help out the neighborhood. And it kind of takes him away from what I heard a lot was a criticism of the other two movies, that he was Spider-Man, but he wasn't Spider-Man because he had all these opportunities. He had everybody had his back. He had these special suits. And so they put him in the cloth suit. And okay, another thing we didn't even talk about, freaking Daredevil's in this movie. That was awesome, dude. I got goosebumps. But
I was waiting for my turn to throw that in there, but go on.
But remember we talked about, I wanted to see them together. I think it's a good setup too, because maybe Daredevil will be somebody who figures out his identity again quickly. And we can see that thing where Daredevil's his new mentor. And now we got this whole new thing where we talked about this in our last iteration of this podcast, that I really want to see just Spider-Man doing Spider-Man in the city, stopping crimes. I think him and Daredevil teaming up would be so cool, and taking down the Kingpin. And there's just so much that we could see that I think would be awesome.
Yeah. So just continuing on with like Daredevil, Charlie Cox in it, I kind of lost it at that part because it's so early in the movie. Like I'm literally like just like tapping my wife on like the shoulder. She's like, and at first I was like a little nervous that like nobody else. I was like kind of looking around like, is anybody like else excited? Nobody like clapped. But then all of a sudden when like the whole like ensemble came together, not the whole, but like when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield came on, like everybody was cheering, which I was like, okay, the theater just redeemed itself on that moment. But when like Charlie Cox was there, I was like, oh, that's him. That's Daredevil.
That was so cool. And when he caught the break, he's like, I'm a very good lawyer.
Hell yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. And not to mention, the terrible post-credit scene with Venom, but somehow the Venom symbiote got left behind. So that does set up that we're going to get a proper black suit symbiote story for the Spider-Man 2 that I would really love to see. Because I think
for the trilogy there.
Yeah, he's lost so much at this point that he has every reason to be a very dark character. And it seems like he's doing all he can to be the nice, like friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So it'd be cool in, say, number 4, he's getting mentored and fighting neighborhood crime. And number 5, everything's going well, but something bad happens again. And then he gets injured. He finds this suit and it brings out all his worst tendencies. And it can be another, a new arc that, like you said, eventually leads into him being the grown man who is a focal point of the universe again. Cause now he'll have been Spider-Man for 8-9 movies and like so much cool stuff. I'm waving my hands like a wild man. So I'm going to,
there could be new love interests. Zendaya is a popular actress. We could see all those pieces come into play. Yeah. So just putting all that out there. Well, before we move any further, let's hear it, Ron. What's your favorite scene? If you can break it down to just one. I know you shared one already, but what were your favorite scenes?
Okay. So obviously it's hard not to say the 3 Spider-Man getting together and doing their special moves. That was awesome. But one that I really was surprised that I love so much was the second real fist fight between Goblin, between Green Goblin and Holland Man. So I broke them down into Holland Man, Toby Maguire Field, and Andrew Garfield Man. So Tom Holland Man versus Green Goblin in the condo was so cool. It was one of those things that I know you didn't do this because you were not crazy or whatever the hell you said. But I would like to get my toys, and I'd imagine, okay, if I were filming a hero movie, what kind of fight scenes would I like to see? So I would be choreographing these in my head, obviously. Someone who did martial arts for a long time, I would also go in the backyard and do them, whatever. But one of the things I always thought would be fun if they have all this power, just see him just freaking leveling through a building. And I love that it was like a WWE match, but instead of using a chair, he'd slam him through 5 floors of a building and then out the window and then catch him and throw him. It was like visceral, and you're like, dang, you saw how evenly matched they were and just how mean the Green Goblin was after seeing Willem Dafoe doing an excellent job of being like the kind-hearted and lost and sad Norman Osborn. And then this freaking vicious like monster come through and just beat the dog shit out of Peter. And then eventually kill Aunt May. Like, it was an emotional scene. It was one of the best fights, probably one of my favorite fight scenes in the whole MCU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did you think when May died? Like, what was like going through your head?
I was like, oh, this is why they never showed Uncle Ben's death. They had a plan all along. That's why they never really brought up Ben, because they wanted to give us 5 movies of May being like his rock, and then take him. So like, obviously everyone gets sad when you see Uncle Ben die, but we know what's going to happen. So to like give us 5 movies of them being really close and being like, oh, why haven't we heard great power, great responsibility? And then see it and her like dying moment. You're like, dude, this is freaking Spider-Man.
Yep. That's when that whole scene happened, like, you're wondering, is she going to live? And then for me, when I heard the line, I'm like, wait a minute.
You're like, time to tear up because she's not making it.
That's the line. It's going to happen. And literally just like my mood just completely changed right there. And I was literally just in my head, like clapping, just like, got to give him props for pulling that off right there, because I heard rumbles that somebody close to the story was going to go, and you didn't know who was going to be. And the way that they tied it in with the line and what's going on in the movie, where it does happen, kudos.
Yeah. And they did a great job of then immediately taking it into what he did with the rest of the film. Like, he wrestled with it, and then, because of his mentors of his other Spider-Man, he became the hero that May instructed him to be. I also love that, as much as I give Sony shit for their trailers, I think Marvel helped them with this, but in the trailers, they cut it. And when Spider-Man reaches for that bomb, there's 2 different versions you see in the trailer, and neither of them is him like swatting it away. One of them, he webs it, and another one, he just misses it all entirely. And then in the trailer, every time they cut to Happy in his car looking upset. So the whole time in all the ads, it looked like Happy was going to die.
Yeah.
Which we're like, oh, that would be kind of sad, but we love Jon Favreau, but who really cares? Happy's not a huge character in the universe. So to get that fake out, and I didn't see that coming. Yeah, I assumed she was going to make it. She's Aunt May. So I thought it was cool.
One piece, this you talk about Happy right there, was that I was a little confused. Like, why wouldn't you admit to Happy when you're standing at the gravestone who you are, being that who he is with Stark, Tech, and the Avengers and his background? That was one of those pieces to me. I'm like, why wouldn't he just say, oh, by the way, and then open up a whole new can of worms? That's just my viewpoint on that.
That's true. I hadn't even considered that. Obviously, we know why he doesn't bring it up to MJ and to Ned. But I feel like, like we talked about, this Spider-Man has lost a lot and he's so down. Maybe he's, they did destroy Happy's house. And Happy was very much in the crossfires in this movie still, and they both lost May. So maybe in his head, he's like, Happy has lost Tony, he's lost May, his house has been destroyed, he's gotten blown up in Iron Man 3. Maybe he's just like, I care about these people, I need to keep them away from me, which is cool, because it also tied together the stories of the other Spider-Man, because we saw that in their movies too, where they're struggling with that. And this is the first time he actually does it. He's like, I'm cutting ties. I need to be, if I want to be a hero and take care of people, then I can take care of them by keeping them distant from me, keeping them safe.
Another scene that kind of, I don't want to say negative because it's a great movie, But I could have done without the kissing scene at the end, personally. I was just like, okay, like...
You said yuck.
Yucky, this is nasty. It just wasn't for me.
Fair. I mean, I felt like it was important because if you noticed throughout the other movies, they never really kind of embraced and kissed. They had like that kind of childish relationship. So to show at the end where she's, they never really were affectionate. So for her to be like, hey, I love you. And then they have that deep, like, emotional kiss. And then she says, don't tell me now. Tell me when you see me after. I was like, oh, that's a really I felt it was a good emotional beat, but I could see where you like kind of did grind the story to a halt for a sec.
Well, since Ronald didn't ask me what my favorite scene is, I thought I was going
to ask right now. Hold on.
No,
stop.
you weren't.
Hey, Tyler, so what's your favorite scene? We talked about mine.
I will say walking out, same end scene was my favorite. But then when I kind of thought about it more and I like started looking it on my phone, I think it was honestly when Ned brought Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield into the scene. Not for what I was talking about earlier. A piece of that is, of course, a part of it. But one, to see a Filipino Lola acting like how she did. And two, Ned Leeds seriously becoming the second most popular Filipino in the world. If you don't know who the number one in the world is, it's Manny Pacquiao. So there's no way that the character that plays Ned Leeds, is going to be past him. But I thought that was pretty cool. You don't really see people talk about Filipinos. So that was pretty cool.
Unless Ned learns how to box, then he's hitting number one, baby.
It's asking a lot. I'm not trying to say anything bad about Jacob, but it was pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of hints that maybe we'll see in the future. But just a cool part for that character, in my opinion.
I thought it was cool too that they've never once made it a thing where they're like, oh, this is Spider-Man's Filipino friend. Like, no, you're just his friend. And I also love that they hinted at Ned having magic in him. Question. So the character of Ned Leeds in the comic books does become the Hobgoblin. And he specifically says, Peter, I promise I'll never turn evil and try to kill you. Do you think we'll see him down the line? Maybe his magic powers get the best of him because we don't know if he'll end up learning how to use them or accidentally stumble upon them. And maybe he gets cursed. Maybe he turns evil. Do you think we'll see him come back as a Hobgoblin?
That was some of the speculation going through my head. And I think I even heard some earlier that might potentially be a part of this movie, that he would have some element of Hobgoblin. So I think it just plants some seeds for potentially seeing some of that if they don't become friends again. But who knows?
I think it'd be really cool to, like we talked about, maybe in a movie or two from now, maybe in the Black Suit Saga, one of the things that turns Peter that way is he's stopping this new crazy villain who's magic based and kind of looks like the Green Goblin, and he goes overboard and hurts him, only to find out it's Ned. Maybe that, and he just is thrown for a loop. Maybe it's after or before the black suit. I think it'd be a really cool reveal, and then he can rehabilitate Ned and maybe fix whatever magic thing goes wrong, and they be friends. And then the Hobgoblin can be a awesome freaking anti-hero with magic. And because the guy that plays Ned Leeds, Jacob Batalon, seems like a really cool dude, and him and Tom Holland are like really good friends in real life, so they have great chemistry, and I'd love to see more of it. One of the other things, speaking of Ned's future, is that Jacob Batalon lost, I read somewhere about 100 pounds between movies, and he looks great. He looks much healthier. So one of my speculations is that maybe that's something that Marvel had told him, that, hey, down the line, we're thinking of having you in a more active role, and we need you to get on the road to being physically prepared to do the stunts and, be a villain, be an anti-hero. And either way, it's just good to see this guy getting healthy, and hopefully his success continues for a long time and we see him back in the MCU soon.
I dig it. With this being a fitness podcast, not slight fitness podcast, it's good to see that kind of stuff. And it was definitely noticeable. That was something that my wife pointed out, was how good he looked, and got to give him props for it. And that speculation that you had right there goes right into it in my book.
Yeah, I was accidental, stumbled upon it. Speaking of fitness and looking good, what did you think of Tom Holland's Spider-Man physique? It's kind of a cross between his first and second physiques he showed up with.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, actually. I know that there was videos and training, but I think it was more for Uncharted. But, I mean, he doesn't look that much bigger. So I don't think it's noticeable, but I still feel like he has, I feel like it's mean to say, like a boyish physique.
Yeah, I mean he's a very small dude, and I will say though he definitely has the best physique of the three Spider-Man. Like Tobey Maguire looked good in the first one, but he looked good for 2002. You know, like they weren't as jacked in movies yet. I feel like he has a very athletic and active young man's physique. But
Hmm.
for Spider-Man, you don't want Spider-Man to be as jacked as say Thor or Wolverine, right? He's supposed to be kind of lithe and thin and athletic. And his powers don't come from muscle; they come from I don't know what the hell the spider juice.
Hmm.
So that's what I feel about his little British physique.
Okay, well, if anybody wanted to know my recommendation for it, since again Ronald did not ask me about it, go see it.
Hey, hey Tyler. So what's your recommendation for the movie? What do you think people should do?
I think that they should spend the money and go see it.
Nice. Yeah, I agree, man. And also Elf, number one movie, Will Ferrell. Woo! LAFC, baby.
Don't ever say that to me again.
The FC stands for fire compartment. You don't like the fire compartment? They're the people who start the fires that the fire department puts out. All right. I feel like we've covered it. Is that it for Spider-Man No Way Home?
That's all the notes I can put down for it.
All right. We had a good old time covering this one, but now it's time to talk about some shit. You got to hit him with the shits, Tyler. Hit us with the WTF moment of the week.
So to finish off what I spoke about earlier with this grandma walking out on FaceTime and giving out spoilers, this is my WTF moment because I was just so blown away that this woman would walk out saying, all the Spider-Mans were in it. They brought back all three of them. What the F are you doing? Not only are you on FaceTime, why are you FaceTime in public? You can't put the phone next to your ear, but to scream out loud, all the Spider-Mans are in the movie. Thankfully, I saw it in my glorious Dolby Cinema, and they take time to clean it out in between so nobody could walk in when everybody's walking out. But please, how many times do you think she actually said that walking out? She probably ruined it for everybody out there. Why the F would you ever do that?
Dude, instead of a what the F, this is a why the F. What a boomer thing to do, huh? Just to A, be on speakerphone in public, and B, ruin the movie for everybody.
Freaking FaceTime. I don't get if you're not even looking at. Are you like watching, looking at the person? No, you're
F&A
walking.
Cotton.
You don't need to put it away.
F&A, Cotton, F&A. All right. It's been a wild one. I got to tell you, this is probably the most excited I've been to cover a movie in a long time. Like this, I think we both freaking loved it. I had a good time covering it. I'm going to need to cool down. You ready to cool down, Tyler?
Cool it down.
All right. So first thing, we're going to talk about what movies are we seeing. Tyler, what movies are you getting into?
I spoiled it already a little bit. That I'm going to be seeing The King's Man on Friday, and then on Sunday, going to be seeing The Matrix, and both of those pretty excited for.
Which one would you say you're most excited for?
Ugh. I actually asked the same question to my wife, and for her, it was actually The Kingsman. She likes that series. But for me, I think it was The Matrix. I'm trying to think of the third movie that had a part of it. I asked her if it was between Spider-Man, Matrix, and The Kingsman. And I know that she said The Kingsman for number one.
Wow, dude. Sonia. Wow.
And for me, it was, I think I actually said The Matrix. And I read just a headline about it that it doesn't quite peak in terms of
don't tell
the first
me, dude.
one.
I'm going to
But
freaking...
people are happy to see it. I'm just
you
saying
give
that.
me the next piggyback ride, I'm going to spit on the back of your neck.
Sheesh, so vicious. Are you seeing any movies this weekend?
I am. Get your black trench coats, get your leather pants, get your little sunglasses, and do a little dance because we're seeing The Matrix, baby. I think I told you we finished the series. We're all caught up. We're into the Animatrix now, which is available on HBO Max. And I also had on DVD. It's supplementary material, yes, but some of the characters from the Animatrix do show up in the mainline films. So it's fun to know. And between this and Cowboy Bebop, my wife was like, wow, these cartoons are really good. I was like, I think I just created someone who's into anime. So I'm pretty excited about that. We are about halfway through the Animatrix. I think there's like 8 vignettes. They're all about 10. They're between like 10 and 15 minutes long. So just watch a couple here and there. And then I'll be watching Elf at least 2 or 3 more times. And if somebody makes me, I'll watch Christmas Story. But I'll tell you what, I already said my one F-bomb, huh?
Yes.
Can I,
PG-13.
I beeping hate that beeping movie. It's a piece of shit. I hate it. It makes me feel weird. Everyone's so weird and mean to that little boy, and I despise that movie. And I don't get it why everybody likes it so much. Boo, boo, boo. Anyway, how are your workouts going?
I actually worked out before this podcast. I had to get it in.
You're all sweaty right now?
Not sweaty, just
you
did
all
upper
moist?
body.
You're a little moist right now?
But as we joked about, I'm really into eccentrics right now, doing negatives, no matter what the exercise is. And I dig it. People check them out. You might like it.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
With no surprise, it was supposed to be a hamstring dominant leg day today, which we've been talking about. I've been somehow, even when we recorded on a Thursday, we recorded on a Saturday, we recorded on a Wednesday, and we're recording on Tuesday. And I've been ending up with a posterior chain dominant leg day. Well, that was supposed to be today, but I'm subbing it for back and buys because one of my clients, we had a fun at the park conditioning days. We played like a really hard game of basketball. We're playing quarters, so it was like actually playing for time. And my
Playing
legs
for
are
keeps?
just we're playing for keeps. I won 20-18, which was actually our score last time we played too. But I am beefed, dude. Not to mention, yesterday my cousin, who's in town with his kids, my niece and nephew, we took them to the park, and he and I were having a competition who could jump the highest and farthest off the swings. And I just
Are you still alive?
wrecked my knees and back. There's a video on my Instagram. It'll be gone in about an hour, but on my Instagram story where I land and you can hear me go, "Who did?" And if the video had continued on, you'd hear me scream, "I feel like my ass is in my chest," because I hit the ground so freaking hard.
I'm done.
Yeah. So needless to say, I will not be hitting legs for a few more days till these guys recover, unless I want to go to the hospital,
That's funny.
So man, that's our cool down. This a fun episode, man. Did you have a good time?
Great time. I've been really wondering, just because I just know you, and movies that I like, sometimes you just go the complete opposite way on them. So I was worried, but I really did deep down think that you enjoyed Spider-Man. So I'm happy to hear it.
How many times do you think I teared up and or cried in that movie?
I think in the back corner, sulking by herself could be a real thing.
Yeah.
Maybe a handful of times.
I'd say south of a dozen for sure. But to our listeners, Tyler we were going to text about it after he finished the movie on Friday. And I just told him to bottle up his feelings, shake up that bottle, and spray it all over me when we get to the podcast. And I think we effectively did that.
Yeah. Held it all in. Cameled it
up. All right, Tyler, it's time to sign us off, bud. So I want to say thank you to every single person who took the time to listen today. You could have been anywhere in the world doing anything, but you're here with us, and we appreciate it. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at MovieBuffs_podcast. And if you like this episode, share it and leave us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It really helps the podcast grow, and it makes us just feel warm and fuzzy inside. It is the holiday season, and it'd be very, very giving of you to do that. Check the links in the description to check out all of our great companies that we work with that help support the podcast, keep our mics hot, and keep these pillows surrounding my computer. Join us next week when we will be discussing and ranking our favorite drowning pool song. Spoiler alert, mine is Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. Okay, everybody, stay buff. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.